Memes. The DNA of the soul. They're probably one of the reasons that Warhammer 40k has been as relevant as it has been for the decades it's been out. If you've seen anything about Warhammer 40k but don't know much about it, it's most likely that you've either seen it in other videos or in memes. So let's go over some of the most iconic memes that the Imperium, which is humanity, has, and explain how these factions got these memes. Also, if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out when I upload a new video. Piling all these memes and explaining them took some time. These memes are pretty silly and wacky though. And to preface the rest of this video like it was some sort of essay, Mark Twain, the renowned American writer, once said, "Explaining humor is a lot like dissecting a frog. You learn a lot in the process, but in the end you kill it." Just like how all the memes aren't going to be that funny after I explain them. This video isn't going to be that funny, sorry. Some of the more generalistic memes permeate through the entirety of the Imperium. The main most important memes are usually about the Emperor of Mankind himself. It had a very interesting philosophy about life, and that is that the galaxy is humanity's alone. The Emperor of Mankind really started to spread his beliefs once he started taking the lead on ruling humanity. That's because humanity messed up with AI a couple of times and almost killed everybody. And it was very important to him that everybody know that humanity was the best, and that everybody else sucked. The ironic part is that another part of his belief was that gods suck, with him getting rid of all religion, or at least attempting to. Because, you know, the Chaos Gods are spooky, and you don't want anybody worshipping them. So he kind of killed, like, everyone who was part of a religion and refused to abandon their faith. That being said, he was mortally wounded, and then, after thousands of years, he was revered as a god himself, being worshipped as the one true god. So he went through all this time trying to stop the worship of gods to become one. So the anti-religious emperor became the icon of his own religion. Oh yeah, also the Imperium's just generally a horrible place to live. If you aren't part of the army or the Imperial Guard or any sort of regiment, you work in a factory. A factory where they don't really care about the working conditions, they just want you to build stuff. And maybe at some point you might get mind wiped and turned into a servitor, which is basically a brainless flesh automaton. And the Space Marines. They have used the Emperor as an excuse to be genocidal maniacs, which the Emperor already kinda was, with them using the Emperor's beliefs to destroy or attempt to destroy most if not all alien species. But they do look really cool while they do it. I mean, just look at them. They're so cool and better than most of your favorite characters that are super soldiers. They can usually solve problems that take Master Chief or Doomslayer a whole game to accomplish, but the difference is that Space Marines aren't one of a kind. These guys are in legions that can save humanity from all kinds of bad news. Bad news that has its own memes that I might talk about in a sequel video if this video does well. The legions of the Space Marines are all different with their own cultures from their Primarchs. The Ultramarines are the Big Blue Boy Scouts of Warhammer 40k, pretty much being the main faction for the bulk of the main editions. Being made to excel at all forms of combat and also be lawyers or something. Or govern people, but that's kind of boring. They also just pull victories out of nowhere like it's nothing. Especially the always honorable Cato Sicarius, the most Ultramarine to ever Ultramarine, winning the day when all seems lost by doing things like running at things and hitting them until they die, until it all works out. But with every long-lasting Ultramarine comes Ultra Depression, or just normal depression for any Space Marine that's seen enough combat and lived enough to realize everything sucks. Also, they follow this book written by their dad that some follow as absolute law. This is where you see the meme of the Codex Astartes not supporting this action. The Salamanders are a bunch of humanitarian master forgesmiths who help everyone out, with them being the most wholesome Space Marine legion. Unless you're an Eldar child, because they love to light aliens on fire. And it's pretty much the only grimdark thing that their Primarch Vulcan did. The Blood Angels are a bunch of artisans that have to deal with a small little issue of having generational trauma drilled into their brain, where they think they're Sanguinius and they imagine everybody else is Horus, with it being called the Black Rage, making the threat of being mistaken by a Blood Angel a silly little mortal mistake. Besides that, they also love drinking blood because of the Red Thirst, and are basically the Space Marine versions of vampires. The Space Wolves are furries. Like, they were made by the Emperor of Mankind with wolf DNA and turn into werewolves eventually. And they're also Vikings. Shout out to Vikings, by the way. If you're one from 700 to 1100, sound off in the comments. The Imperial Fist love making bunkers and various other defendable structures, so much that they most likely build sandcastles on the beach, peacefully, until the Iron Warriors kick the sandcastle over, and also probably, fart in their face and run away. The Iron Hands are the fastest army to be sold on eBay after one nerf, because they're boring. And if you think that's mean, ooh, who cares? Who are you gonna tell? Your Primarch? The Raven Guard are masters of shadows and kings of the ambush. Too bad they're all known for just being edgy wannabe Batmen, and the Night Lords do that job way better for 40k. Also, their drip was stolen by the Raven Wings and the Dark Angels. Talking about the Dark Angels, well, I don't know any memes about the Dark Angels, because if I did, I would be executed on the spot. Are they gone now? The meme of the Dark Angels is that, and finally the White Scars pride themselves on going fast. So fast that when they're on their bikes, they're filled with a sense of childlike wonder on their bikes. My Primarch let me flank and take out the supply lines because I'm whimsical in nature. Space Marines are also subdivided into chapters, which are different parts of legions. The Black Templar are a rage-filled successor chapter of the Imperial Fist that don't follow the book or laws set in place by Rabute Gilliman, with their main meme being that they're doing very illegal things and go against the Codex Astartes. But they're kind of allowed to do that because their sheer size was carrying the rest of the Imperium, and because they were also eternally on a crusade, allowing the chapter to have larger numbers. And they're a bunch of Days Vault Crusaders, with memes of them going on crusades and never stopping. The Lamenters are a successor chapter of the Blood Angels that are labeled the most unfortunate chapter in the entirety of the Imperium, with them being put through the worst things imaginable, with the entire chapter being almost completely destroyed multiple times, including being ripped apart by demons in the warp, losing most of their Marines due to attrition and wars, and being massacred in every large-scale conflict they've been a part in. They were also branded as heretics and traitors for a long time because they were good friends with another chapter that turned into chaos traitors, while also dealing with the debuffs that just being a Blood Angel gives you. Surprisingly though, they are very awesome and humanitarian to everybody else though. They look like taxis, so that's kinda weird. Legion of the Damned are so cool looking. If a guy sees them, they'll probably say hell yeah when they look at them. They're a mysterious warband of Space Marines that comes out of nowhere when all seems lost. So their memes are mainly about how they save the day at the last moment possible, with their armor where they look like flaming skeletons probably being one of the scariest things you could have to fight if you were a Chaos worshipper. The Carcharodons, or the Space Sharks, are a suspected Raven Guard successor that act like a bunch of sharks, usually circling in on fights if enough blood is spilled. They also sometimes just invade entire planets and enslave their populations, using them as slaves to keep the war machine going, so that's not really cool. The Flesh Tearers are just Imperium-sanctioned Khorne Berserkers, with them slaughtering their own allies if their own need for violence isn't satiated. Kinda like when your homie team kills you at the end of a Slayer match in Halo. The Blood Ravens are yet another mysterious chapter of somewhat unknown origin that are a bunch of Space Marines that are featured in the Dawn of War games. And they just cannot stop stealing relics and various other doodads because they're kleptomaniacs. The Astral Claws are known as those guys that turn to the side of chaos post-heresy, with all their memes usually being the issues they caused because of their changing of sides, and they were friends with the Lamenters. The Celestial Lions are a chapter that saw a crime an Inquisitor committed, so they were mysteriously killed by a bunch of Orc snipers during their time on Armageddon during its third war. And the Crimson Fist are the first Space Marine chapter to get the spotlight in the first edition of Warhammer Rogue Trader, and they slowly fell out of relevance, and their identity is entirely based on having a red gauntlet. The Grey Knights are an elite fighting force of the Imperium's best, put together to fight the forces of chaos. The issue is that if you see the Grey Knights, they're probably going to kill you or wipe your mind. With one of the most infamous occurrences of this happening is where Grey Knights needed to bathe in the blood of innocents to help them cleanse themselves of warp corruption. And lastly, the Angry Marines are a fan-made chapter that is just a bunch of super angry and obscene acting Space Marines, like those who participate in flame wars in chat rooms or in Call of Duty. You can usually find them having angry faces and curse words painted on their armor. There are also some other organizations of the Imperium that have some silly, funky, quirky things. First up, let's talk about the Imperial Guard. Their main claim to fame is that if you make it past the first 15 hours in combat, you are a seasoned veteran. the average life expectancy of one of these normal humans in flak armor being shockingly short on the battlefield, training for years to quite possibly die moments after you're first deployed. Their schools are also pretty messed up, with 24-hour-long artillery drills with particularly bad classes, having molten cement poured on them. And since they're just the humans in 40k, they come from many different planets, like the regiments from Vestroya. The Vestroyan Firstborn look like a bunch of Royal Russian guards and act like Russian, with many of the memes about them being ones that real-life Russia has. The Cadian system is where the largest amount of guardsmen come from. The planet got turned into an asteroid belt though, with the planet breaking before the guard did, showcasing indomitable human will. Kriegsmen come from a death world and look like they came out of World War I. They like digging trenches, hitting things with shovels, and dying, because they're hardcore freaks. The Catachan Jungle Fighters are 40k's stand-in for Australia in a world where everything is carnivorous, like even the plants. They're so great at fighting that they have easily deflected any invasions that have come their way, with 40k's Chuck Norris stand-in Sly Marbo being from Catachan. Caiaphas Cain is a hero of the Imperium, being someone who has stopped multiple invasions and saved multiple worlds. His secret though, he's actually incredibly anxious and cowardly, but man, he always somehow decimates his opposition. The Ogrins are a subspecies of humans that grew dull and dim-witted after evolving to be meat slabs to fight things. That being said, they are given memes of being simple-minded folks serving to Emperor and following the Commissar's orders for medals. After all, a small mind is a tidy mind, making them perfect Imperial citizens. Gaunt's ghosts are the Tanis first and only, the only survivors from a world that has been long since destroyed. They're just normal people that the 40k community is emotionally attached to, mainly because there's so many books about them, and they're a must taken tabletop. And no, it's not because their models give you anything good, it's just that they're so cool you should take them. The Imperium also has some interesting organizations that have their own quirks too. The Inquisition is made by Malcador the Sigillite and the Emperor of Mankind to get rid of chaos corruption. That being said, the Inquisition are one of the most corruptible entities in all of Warhammer 40k. In any story where there's an Inquisitor and they aren't the main character, they are usually corrupted by chaos at some point or are already traitors. The Imperium also has its assassins that are so top secret that their actions are covered up as being orc snipers. The Sisters of Battle are nuns with guns and power armor that are so hardcore that they drop churches on the battlefield from low orbit. The Custodians are the Emperor's elite bodyguard, with them looking like bananas. They also are Henry Cavill's favorite tabletop army, and with the most well-known Custodian characters coming from the fan-made If the Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech device, with characters like Kitten and the Fabulous Custodians. The Mechanicus are the machine-worshipping tech guys of the Imperium, and they really like technology. Like maybe even toasters, like a little too much. Knights are pompous a-holes that act like loyalty in real life, and Titans are the biggest around and have guns larger than buildings, being these impossibly large monoliths of destruction, being seen as manifestations of the machine god by the Mechanicus. And last but not least, the Adeptus Arbites, which are just a bunch of Judge Dredd stand-ins that are super cool looking. That's all the memes I could find for the Imperium right now and its many organizations / armies. I would love to do a normal outro, but I have a headache. Like and subscribe if you liked, or whatever. I'll see you peeps in the next video. Hopefully. Maybe.